Hello everyone. So earlier this month, the Teaching Tactics episode on the German assault rifle platoon has reached 1 million views. And that really is just an amazing number that so many people have watched a single video. It really is a milestone for Digital Battlefield Tours. And it clearly shows there's a lot of interest in this subject. So to celebrate achieving this milestone, I have this special video planned with an interesting source that I found, a post-war source that, among other things, looks back at the German development of infantry firepower and their ways of organizing and improving it. And this source is written by former German officers, and it is done for the Americans. So this was part of a larger study series carried out shortly after the Second World War. And what it essentially, the purpose of it was that the Americans tried to gather as much information, as much experience from the German army, mainly looking at the Eastern Front and the combat against the Red Army there. Because of course this was the early Cold War, so they wanted as much experience as they could get from fighting the Red Army. And a lot of different studies were carried out, but I found this specific one, which is interesting because it looks at infantry organization. The full title is Infantry Organization and Equipment based on German experiences in Russia. It is written in 1951, so again early Cold War. And the main author is Major General Reinhardt, who himself was experienced as an infantry commander on the Eastern Front. And it isn't just himself, but he actually had 15 fellow officers who worked as contributors. And he interviewed them, they had little debate clubs. So that's what makes it a very interesting source. It is a collective knowledge that they discussed, they debated, and then General Reinhardt then collected that knowledge in this very comprehensive study. It's a great source and I definitely plan to use it in an upcoming Teaching Tactics. But right here, right now, there are a few interesting highlights specifically dealing with the assault rifle that I think will make for a very interesting bonus episode to celebrate the Sturmzug video reaching 1 million views. So yeah, let's get right into it. Like I said, there are 3 main points I want to cover, all discussing the assault rifle. And the first one deals with the why. So why did they actually want a new type of infantry small arm, but also what it had to do in order to really give them the edge that they were looking for. So to quote, "The automatic rifle is the weapon of the modern infantryman. The dispersion of modern infantry operations on the one hand, and the importance of the individual combatant, especially in Russia on the other hand, demand a light weapon possessing great firepower that can be issued to every infantryman. The German infantry therefore hailed the introduction of the model 1943 automatic rifle as the fulfillment of its greatest need. Not until he was equipped with this weapon did the German infantryman have the means required to fight Russians and become a well-armed individual fighter who, like a hunter, fired carefully aimed single shots without having to reload. Even during the last moment of an attack, while firing on the move, he could place bursts of fire on the enemy. In defense, he could receive the attacking enemy with massed fire to an extent never possible with machine guns. An automatic weapon that is to be used as infantry handarm should incorporate the following capabilities: semi-automatic and automatic operation, accurate and effective shooting up to 600 meters, light weight of weapon and ammunition so that the rifleman can always carry the weapon plus adequate ammunition on his person, and a simple construction that will stand up in mud, snow and frost. It is commonly agreed that the Sturmgewehr met these requirements." So that's a fairly clear and concise description of what these officers were looking for in an assault rifle. They call it an automatic rifle, but they clearly mean the STG-44. So what it had to do, so the typical characteristics of an assault rifle, but also why they wanted it. So this increase in individual firepower. And as discussed in the main Teaching Tactics episode, this actually has some quite interesting consequences for infantry organization as a whole, the squad, the platoon, the company level. And that's also something that is discussed further in this study. So this was more a technical discussion, but then I have another quote here which deals more with the actual deployment of these assault rifles and how best to use them in terms of infantry organization. And what is especially interesting is that they are actually referring back quite explicitly to this specific assault platoon that was discussed in the main video. So that was I used a wartime source in that video, which specifically dealt with the Volksgrenadier Company. So that was a late 1944 new type of infantry organization that was supposed to have preferably one or two of those assault rifle companies, platoons per company. There were earlier attempts by the Germans to adopt assault rifles in special units, but those were typically the mechanized infantry, the Panzergrenadiere. But this is interesting because it is just the regular line infantry, the Volksgrenadier, which meant we're looking at a wholesale adoption. If the line infantry gets assault rifles, then clearly they are planning to give them to everyone. And that's what this says. So, to quote, "There was also a demand for more rapidly firing small arms for individual riflemen. This demand was at first met by the issuance of submachine guns and automatic self-loading rifles. The weapon desired by infantrymen, and which would provide them with great firepower so urgently needed in Russia, was the automatic rifle. After it had been tried out in 1943, the issuance of this new weapon to the infantry was begun in 1944. It was too late, however, to equip all units with this weapon. In the Volksgrenadier divisions, activated since 1944, the model 1943 automatic rifle was at first issued to one platoon and only later to 2 platoons per rifle company. It was impossible to increase the distribution because of production difficulties." So there you have it. They are explicitly referring to the Sturmzug, so the assault platoon of the Volksgrenadier Company. And that's what the training pamphlet that I based the Teaching Tactics episode on was specifically about. So this organization. And that's what makes it so interesting, that then years later, these officers are explicitly referring back to it as something noteworthy, as a sort of a milestone in their attempt to rebuild their infantry force around this new capability, around this new weapon system. Clearly with the intent of making this an army-wide standard. And as they note, it were the production difficulties that prevented this, but this wasn't just a one-off type of special assault unit, even if that may have been how they were used in the end. But there was clearly this intent to standardize first one platoon, then 2 platoons, but preferably the entire company, and at that point the entire division becomes more and more based around assault rifles, which meant that at a certain point, had the war gone on and Germany could do what they want in terms of production, then you probably would have seen assault rifles like the STG-44 becoming the standard issue. Now on that subject, I have a third point that deals further with this universal nature of adoption, which is so key to the assault rifle, that you don't just use it as a specialist replacement, handed out 1 or 2 per squad to replace the MP40, but to actually produce them as the new norm, as the new standard issue service arm. And only then does it really revolutionize infantry firepower. That's also why I picked the title, because the assault rifle really is just such an increase in firepower that it shifts things around. And that's what you see quite clearly here, is that the planned universal adoption of assault rifles isn't just going to replace an armament, but it's going to overhaul squad organization, platoon organization, company organization. And especially in regards to the machine gun, which is such an iconic part of German armament in the Second World War. Especially in that regard, there are some interesting shifts taking place here, as is detailed in the following quote. "All contributors unanimously consider superfluous the retention of submachine guns, rifles, carbines or other small arms. If manufacturing facilities permit, and this is considered to be the case in this study, automatic rifles should be uniformly used as small arms." And then on the issue of machine guns specifically, after the introduction of the automatic rifle, the machine gun lost in importance, although it has not yet become superfluous. The necessity of its retention is based on its greater range and the possibility, with the aid of the gun mount, of fixing and limiting the aim. With one exception, all contributors favor use of the machine gun only in the form of a heavy machine gun on a gun mount. Von Woedke alone calls also for one light machine gun per rifle squad. This suggestion is to be rejected, however, as contrary to the purpose of the automatic rifle. So that last line there, that's really significant, because what it is essentially saying is the suggestion of retaining one light machine gun per rifle squad is to be rejected as contrary to the purpose of the assault rifle. So in other words, the purpose of the assault rifle is to unburden the rifle squad of having to carry this machine gun with them. And that's so groundbreaking if you look at how German infantry armament in the Second World War was so based around the machine gun. So they used these quite heavy universal machine guns, MG34, MG42, as their squad base of fire, and that gave them a tremendous amount of firepower, but it was fairly heavy compared to more of the lighter machine guns like the Bren gun and the DP-28. And what's so fascinating is, on the one hand, it was nice to have this firepower, but it was very much needed to compensate for the bolt actions that the majority of the riflemen used. But then as soon as bolt actions are being replaced by this new assault rifle, these German officers are actually very eager to just kick the machine gun up a few levels away from the squad level, so they can have a level of mobility based around the assault rifle and no longer have to carry this machine gun with them, which gives them firepower, sure, but it also burdens them quite a bit with this different type of weapon. So there's this shift taking place. That's where the revolution in infantry firepower is by giving every rifleman more individual firepower in the form of an assault rifle. You can actually move other weapon systems around. And in this case, the MG42, which was really well liked by the German officers. At another point in the study, they do praise it, but if possible, they do like to move it into more of a heavy role at the company and the battalion level, preferably using those tripods to give them greater range, make them more of a area suppression, area denial type of weapon, that then the platoons and the squads can move under using their own universal assault rifle armament. So really quite interesting. And this is in line with what the video on the assault platoon, the teaching tactics, already concluded. Only in 1944 they were a bit more conservative, so they grouped the machine guns at the platoon level. You had this fire squad of 2 machine guns, and then the remaining 2 squads were all based around their assault rifles. And now a few years later, looking back in this study, they actually confirmed that this was sensible, and they take it even further by then pushing the machine guns even out of the platoon and more as a dedicated heavy company battalion level weapon. So they're placing a lot of faith in the collective power of the assault rifle to really shoot the small units forward. Now, Von Woedke, he alone calls for the retention of the light machine gun at the squad level, and he is dismissed by his fellow officers. But I think looking beyond, he does have a point, because this study is a bit hybrid. On the one hand, they are looking back at their World War II experience, but on the other hand, the Americans that ordered this study to be written, they did allow them to use the technology that they had at the time. So it's a bit of a sort of time traveling. These German officers are revisiting the Eastern Front, but they're doing so with the knowledge of hindsight, but also with technology that is available in the late 40s, early 50s. So that's probably why they put so much emphasis on the assault rifle, is because it would give them a firepower advantage in the 40s. However, looking ahead further into the Cold War, assault rifles become more widely adopted, and especially in 1951, when this study is written, the Red Army is already working on developing the AK platform. So the purpose of this entire study is to prepare for the Cold War, and in that sense, if the Cold War is going to be fought mainly with assault rifles and similar weapons, then actually von Woedke has a point, because then firepower equalizes out again if everyone uses assault rifles. So at that point, you may have to reintroduce some of these more concentrated firepower weapons back into the platoon and the squad level, which is precisely what is done, because you get things like squad automatic weapons like the RPK. So sort of a very ultra-light machine guns, heavy assault rifles, to give the squads and the platoons just a bit more of an edge over a rifle squad or platoon that also fields assault rifles. So overall, a very interesting study, and I'm definitely planning on making this a dedicated teaching tactics episode at a future point. But hopefully for now this has been interesting, and a interesting little bonus to the teaching tactics video on the German assault rifle platoon. And yeah, thank you all for watching.